Hey everybody, Brian here for Work to Game, and today we're going over the patch 4.55 patch notes. So in this video and live stream, we're going to be doing live reading and reaction to it. From here, we'll also then cover the policy changes regarding harassment, discrimination, pretty much what kind of penalties can suffice. So there are definitely some changes regarding the prohibited activities, and I just want to go over those as well as a part of kind of one encompassing video. To talk about what has changed with the latest update to Final Fantasy XIV. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in to our patch notes, and hopefully whether you're reading along or you're watching this live or you're watching this after the fact, you can get the information for it. So patch 4.55, it is the patch right before the next kind of part 2 of the story. So with this, we're getting pretty much two big pieces of content. The next expansion of Eureka and the update to Rival Wings and the feast regarding PvP. So, what is a part of our playable content? So, new side story quests have been added, and it's called, we shall call it Hydatos. And this kicks off in Kugane. So, if you're looking for that, just go into there. Now, we've got furnishings from the Final Fantasy XIV furnishing design contest have been added, and they're showing some examples here. It looks like a nice little tree fort. Well done. Congratulations. That looks really fantastic in Gridania. New furnishings have been added. There you go, a nice little. Oh man, I love it. I love it so much. New orchestrion roles have been added. That's not really a shocker. We get those all the time. Then we got new Triple Triad cards and new opponents for the Mandeville Gold Saucer for Triple Triad. Miscellaneous updates. Wonders Tales, the Astragalus, which is the Rival Wings, has now actually just been changed to Rival Wings. So now going forward, you should be good to go from there. And new emotes have been added. So for the battle system, what are we going to be fighting? What are we going to be doing? That is the Forbidden Land of Eureka. Hydatos has been added, and we can see this beautiful screenshot. We saw this having them run around this area, and it looks fantastic. You can see the pillars of water and steam blasting up those rocks up in the air. Just well done, Eureka. Despite having however you fall on the category of it, at the end of the day, it is some of the best zone design they have done, period. And so, anyway, to enter this, you have to complete the Eureka Pyros story. So that's usually a #1 question we get here on the channel. Like, how do you get in? How do you get access to it? The item level sync is still at 300. The time limit still set to 180. So it's still using everything, whether you like Eureka or not. It is the same kind of concept and system. So, they say, obviously, you need to complete the Eureka Pyros story and obviously be level 70. You couldn't be... it's kind of redundant to have this here because there's no other way to get in. And again, it kicks off in Kugane. Now, logos actions. 1 additional logogram and 6 new logos have been added. And it's Sacrifice L restores 100% of the target's HP. Even if the target is KO'd, it cannot be executed if currently afflicted by Doom. And then this inflicts doom on yourself for 10 seconds. So Eureka weapons. After fully augmenting a Eureka weapon in Pyros and proceeding to a certain point in the Hydatos story, you will be able to augment your Eureka weapon further by speaking to Geralt in Hydatos. Eureka armor augmentation will be unlocked once 56 unique logos actions are registered in your log. So I guess there's a way that you want to go catch them all, so that way you can actually do your armor augmentation as well. Happy bunnies. Hydatos is also home to many a happy bunny. As a reward for saving them from their imminent peril, happy bunnies will help you find hidden treasure on the island. And then you have notorious monsters. Players may encounter notorious monsters that cannot be found in other regions of Eureka. Those who would engage with them are advised to seek aid from other adventurers. Defeating the notorious monsters yields a great deal of elemental experience as well as a variety of rewards. And you can see one of those monsters right here. I don't know the name of it. I guarantee you somebody either watching does or we'll have it shortly after. But that is just such a phenomenal looking dragon there. I'm just a fan of dragons, hands down, as my voice cracks, because that's how excited I get. The Baldassian Arsenal. The Baldassian Arsenal is a brutally difficult, and they keep saying that you got to be prepared for this, open dungeon that can be challenged by up to 56 players at once. To enter, you will need to complete the main Eureka storyline and prepare for the worst. The entry requirements for this duty are extremely strict as savage bosses, devious traps, and an effect that prevents resurrection by certain means all await you within. Those who hope to challenge this dungeon should read all available information thoroughly and properly understand the risks before entering. So, entering the arsenal. Ethereal nodes throughout Hydatos can provide access to the Baldassine arsenal. To make use of these nodes, your elemental level must be 60. You will also require a particular status enhancement. There are two varieties of ethereal nodes, unable or unstable blue nodes and unstable red nodes. Regardless of the type, each node will disappear once accessed by a player, or if a certain amount of time passes without being accessed. So only the player who accesses a node will be transported, even if that player is in a party at the time. The appearance of the ethereal node is related to the atmospheric condition Umbral's turbulence. That's cool. I love just that visually. It looks really exciting. Like, this image alone is making me debate if I should go get into Eureka. Still no word on level sync. Still no, and they talked about it being a technical restriction, and that they're looking for the next thing within Shadowbringers to address that. So we're gonna have to wait and see. So on unstable ethereal nodes, the etheric stabilizer is required to use unstable nodes. Etheric stabilizers can be acquired in Hydatos through various means and will be consumed once they are used to access the node. It's late. Stable nodes do not require the use of etheric stabilizers. However, each one will only appear after a certain amount of time has passed, following the disappearance of an unstable node. So, what are the resurrection restrictions? And this has been a question on my mind for a long time. The detrimental status effect, resurrection restricted, will be applied upon entering the Baldassine arsenal. While the status is active, you can only be resurrected via limit break or a specific logos action. For this reason, be aware that KO carries heavy risk. So, withdrawal and re-entry. If you choose to return or use the return function from the menu or accept the prompt to return to the starting point while KO'd in the arsenal, you will be removed from the dungeon and transported to the expedition camp in Hydatos. To re-enter the dungeon, you will once again need to access an ethereal node, so think carefully before returning. Rewards. Those who defeat the boss within and clear the entirety of the arsenal will be richly rewarded. To do so will be no mean feat. However, you must communicate well with your fellow adventurers if any of you are to reach the prize. And it looks like you're running a flying Ozma. And that is just perfection. That is just perfection. Holy smokes. Oh my goodness. Okay. A final warning. The Baldassine Arsenal, final warning, guys, will present unique challenges to even the most storied of adventurers. No matter how easily they have forged a path to Eureka thus far, entry in and itself will be difficult, and once inside, you must expect to face many a bitter defeat before ever tasting victory. To clear the dungeon, adventurers need wisdom, bravery, strength, perseverance, trusted their companions, and a whole lot of time. Like, man, I wish they would release these notes at 3 in the afternoon. This will not be easy. Be prepared. And then you have, I believe, premium, absolute virtue. I don't know. I was thinking premium virtue. Anyway, the following adjustments have been made to Eureka Pyros. Players whose elemental level is 51 or higher will automatically be synced to level 50. The elemental EXP buff will be applied upon entry. The amount of elemental experience gained from defeating enemies while below elemental level 50 has been increased. And the following items can now be exchanged with the Expedition Birdwatcher. So you can turn in the flame for Pyros crystals times 50. Replicas of fully augmented Eureka Pyros weapons can be bought from the Stalhunder in Kugane. The logogram wisdom of the Remembered is now called Spirit of the Remembered. The drop rate for the Ephonios Calme Fife in Hell's Cur Extreme has been increased. Moreover, players can now obtain these items in exchange for totems by speaking with Eshkina. Cannot pronounce that name. Oh, excuse me. And then you can see that you need 99 to be able to get a totem. The drop rate for the hollowed Kami Fife of the Retha Snakes Extreme has been increased. So that's for the mount, if you guys are not fully aware. And all right, so PvP actions and adjustments have been changed as follows. Paladin's getting a 500 HP buff. Warrior is getting a 500 HP decrease. Monk, Riddle of Fire and Riddle of Earth is being reduced from 15 seconds to 45 seconds total. Scholar Eye for an Eye, recast time has been reduced to 30 seconds. And Astrologian's Light Speed, recast time has been reduced to 60 seconds. Season 12 for the Feast is going to end and pre-season will begin. When the season ends, the top-ranking players for each data center will receive vouchers via the Moogle delivery service. Players finished in bronze or higher tier can claim rewards by speaking with the Feast quartermaster in the Wolves Den. Now, something's going to be happening here, and we're going to talk about it in the second part of this when we talk about prohibited activities. So just kind of stay tuned as a note, because there are some things that I know people do with win trading for these kind of rewards, and so we do need to make sure we address that. So please kind of, pay attention or go read the articles that will be linked in the description below. So for Rival Wings, the Hidden Gorge map has been added and includes several new features. So Rival Wings is a large-scale PvP battle involving up to 48 combatants. Participants are divided into two teams, the Falcons and the Ravens, and comprised of 6 light parties each, 4 people. During the Hidden Gorge campaign, teams vie for control for supplies delivered by the Ceruleum engines and seek the aid of the Goblin Mercenaries to bid to destroy the opponent's core. Provided the Rival Wings has been unlocked, players will be able to enter the Hidden Gorge matched from the release of patch 4.55. To unlock Rival Wings, you must be a Disciple of War Magic level 30 or higher and have completed one of the following Grand Company quests. And it's pub no longer for Mal, Twin, and Immortal. Now, once you've fulfilled these requirements, you can talk to Softnox in the Wolf's Den Pier to be able to get access to this stuff. So you just need to be level 30, and then the maximum party size for this is going to be 4. So same rules seem to obviously apply to where Rival Wings was. I can do this. Let's see how many yawns total. Let's count them up. Put a scoreboard. Anyway. The rule and victory conditions are similar to those used in the Astrologus map. For more details, see the Rival Wings guide. You guys can check that out. If you have not done it, it should be a lot of fun. And with the new map, this might be a really good opportunity to get in with a low queue time to be able to do this content. So Ceruleum engines are a new addition to this specific map for Rival Wings. So they move across the map on rails at high speed, stopping at the loading stations at the center of the map. By taking control of the loading stations, teams can claim supplies and delivered by the engines. So when they're in motion, if you come in contact with an engine while it's moving, you will incur a potentially lethal damage. A warning will sound to indicate the approach of the Ceruleum engine. Ceruleum engines carry supplies to loading station. It is not possible to enter a loading station while riding any of the mechs in the game. But occupying a loading station when the Ceruleum engines arrives at the station, standing in the area next to the engine will cause the gauge to fill. Once it's full, your team will occupy the station. The gauge fills more quickly, and you have a higher number of team members near the engine than the opponent. The greater difference that in players and the quicker the gauge fills, the greater the difference in players, the greater the quicker the gauge fills. There we go. Say it right, Brian. However, only the first 4 from each team are counted. Those standing near the engine will also gain the Sheer Will status, which will greatly increase damage dealt. Making use of the status will help you to reduce the number of enemies that are occupying the station more quickly, and obviously occupy it more quickly. Controlling a loading station. Once a loading station has been occupied, a new gauge will appear indicating your control over the station. When filled, this station will be under your team's control, allowing you to claim its supplies. The gauge will only fill when your team has a number of members equal or higher than the opponent in the area. When the supplies have been claimed, the Ceruleum engine will leave the station and the gauges will be reset. So number 1 on the UI is its supply type. The 2 members per team up to 4 right there. Number 3, occupied. I guess that's the bar. Number 4, occupation gauge. And then number 5, control gauge. Then, oh, that's pretty cool. I like that. That's a nice little UI element. We'll have to see how it plays out in the long run. So there are 4 types of supplies. For the first half of the match, the Cerulean engine will deliver main Cerulean tanks, gobby juices, and gob tank keys at random. In the second half of the match, they will only deliver gob crates. Each type grants its own benefit and increases the soaring stack of the whole team. So the Cerulean tank, each party member team gains 50 Cerulean, soaring stack increase 1. This arrives during the first 12 minutes of the match, and you can see its icon as the little train station or little Cerulean tank. Gobby Juice. This effect fills the adrenaline gauge of every team member. The storing stack increases by 1, and it arrives during the first 12 minutes of the match. And apparently its icon looks like a fist, but I guess that's the effect for the Gob Juice. Either way. Gob Tanks. The effect. 2 Gob Tanks will appear at the core and will travel down to the north and south routes to the enemy base, and the storing stack will increase by 1. This arrives during the first 12 minutes of the match, and you can see its icon with the Gob Tank symbol. Gob Crates. They grant all the effects of main Cerulean tanks, Gob Juice, and Gob Tanks. Soaring stack increases by 3, and after 12 minutes have passed, this will become available, and you can see its icon showing all 3 potentials. Now, one of the big twists that they've actually added to this map is a concept called Goblin Mercenaries. They went over in detail about this at the live letter, but here are obviously the notes. So if you have not heard about this, this is kind of how it's going to go down. After a certain amount of time has passed, Goblin Mercenaries will randomly appear from the north and south mercenary bases. Initially, they will not side with either team and will attack any player that approaches. However, it is possible to have them ally with your team. So if the damage your team deals to the Goblin Mercenary surpasses that of the opposing team by a certain amount, it will join your side. If the Mercenary's HP reaches 0 before the condition has been fulfilled, it will form an alliance with whichever team dealt it the most damage. A gauge above the Goblin Mercenary shows the difference in damage dealt by each team. Falcons are shown in blue and Ravens are shown in red. The Mercenary Deployment. Once you have formed an alliance with the Mercenary, it will appear at your team's core and will attempt to destroy the enemy's towers and core, much like a mammoth would. Forming an alliance with a Mercenary that appeared from the north Mercenary base will cause it to travel along the northern route. The same being true with the southern Mercenary base and the southern route. Mercenaries are also governed by the Cerulean obligation status, and they will leave the field of battle once the status counts down to 0. After a certain amount of time passes, they will reappear from their respective base and will no longer be allied with either team. Players will be unable to register for Astrologos in order to focus matchmaking on Hidden Gorge. So everybody's going to be in this one map. So that's pretty smart, because unless it was just Rival Wings, that's always kind of a weird thing how they split it up, where it's like, oh, I want to do, PvP, and then it's like you don't know really what is going on, and so they need to fix it. Long story short, hopefully Shadowbringers is going to be exactly what that needs. All right, so new items have been added. You can see some new gear there. That looks really good. Nice little green belt. I like it. New items have been added and will be listed here at a later date, so you can check back with the notes later if you really want to see the detailed list. New mounts have been added. I love his expression. He looks so happy. He's just happy to be flying out in the world. That's fantastic. New minions have been added. And then, oh man, they do such a good job. I really love collecting all the different things, and especially now with the roulette being the way you can make these mounts really work for you. It is such a good thing. So system updates, we've got new achievements and titles been added, new text commands have been added, new phrases, new music. You can no longer delete a character that was logged out while in a duty. Okay. The server backup function now is cross-platform. Yay, we did it. Support between PC, Mac, and PlayStation versions. This feature is still in beta and will not be fully compatible with your play environment. It is strongly recommended that before attempting a backup in the servers, you copy your local data to a USB device or use storage if you're a subscriber to PlayStation Plus. So good to know. Read on for more details. We're not going to do that right now. So resolved issues. The following issues have been addressed. An issue with Domain Mahjong where the titles and the discard pile would be grayed out after declaring Ricci under certain conditions. An issue where a player was using a performance action that would be displayed standing upright with no music playing and that the character display limit had been exceeded. The issue affected Blue Mage actions wherein the effective bristle was not removed after using Inkjet. The issue where submitting items for supply and provisioning missions as a Blue Mage prevented the correct amount of XP from being awarded the corresponding Disciple of Land or Hand class under certain conditions. An issue where characters could not change the Blue Mage change to Blue Mage while in the Ivory Chapel. An issue wherein the Fate clearing the Hive could not be complete with the Severance 7 Splinter was defeated with a Blue Mage using the action Doom. An issue where the STD Fenrir was not displayed at the correct size. And an issue, the Free Company member list, where the information from the second page onwards was not displayed correctly. An issue where attempting to blacklist a character via the chat log would result in a different character being added to the blacklist. I need to go check my blacklist. That would be so... Oh, man, like, why do you blacklist me? Oh, no. An issue where the attack names of Vein Splitter and Concentrativity were switched during the quest battles in Crimson. It began, and the time between the seconds. And other various issues have been also addressed. Some known issues that they are currently aware of. An issue where in Eureka, the targeting certain NPCs having to use the Magicka Auto subcommand will result in the Magicka board spinning. A issue in Eureka Hydatos where the petrification status is not removed even when the boss's cast is defeated. An issue in Eureka Hydatos where the visual effects of certain monsters do not display correctly when they attack. An issue in Eureka Hydatos map where certain text is incorrect. An issue in the challenge log where an entries prepare dice and luck be a lady tonight incorrectly reference Esther logos rather than rival wings. And an issue wherein the gamepad button commands are not displayed correctly when navigating the Free Company member list and being displayed on 2 pages. All right, let's see. Those are the patch notes for patch 4.55. This is, I think, a pretty decently sized patch. We're getting obviously the second half of the story, with 4.56, which is going to be in March, and March is not all that far away. If there's anything I missed in chat, just feel free to sound off and let me know. I have not been fully watching it, but thank you guys for the 8 thumbs up for that. So without further ado on that, let's go ahead and probably it's, I think, Control Tab. Let's see how's this. There we go. So they've made important changes to the prohibited activities and account penalty policy within Final Fantasy XIV, and I think it's important we talk about it here, and that way you have the information on top of the notes. So if you're watching with us live, there's been some changes. We're going to go over what it means and the reasons why they're making the changes, and as well as what kind of penalties are being imposed. So they say, obviously, reasons for the change. Up until now, we operated under the philosophy that this is an MMORPG, and frequent in-game intervention by Square Enix would inhibit the player's experience. Under this philosophy of mind, GMs have intervened only in cases of racial and sexual discrimination or in other severe cases. GMs would not actively take action against other types of behavior that were deemed to be annoying, but not crossing the line from the objective eye. Instead, encouraging the involved players to resolve the situation through communication, adding that players to the blacklist or other peaceful methods. However, times have changed, and although Final Fantasy XIV is an MMORPG, it is now our belief that it is better for the community as a whole for us to intervene in situations where a player is subjected to abusive behavior of another player, rather than worrying about inhibiting communication between players. As this change is in course requires changes to our fundamental policies, and as such, a change would be difficult to reverse. We spent considerable time carefully reviewing its potential impact. Ultimately, we came to the conclusion that it is better for the community as a whole for us to clamp down on abusive behavior, and we have decided to move forward with this major change. Needless to say, everyone will have their own view on the situation, so a GM will continue to provide an objective eye, with a more proactive approach to in-game conflicts. We will strive to protect players who are considerate towards others and provide a high-quality service in which players can play in a more comfortable and safe environment. Note, the penalties have been adjusted so that the appropriate action can be taken against offensive players depending on the severity of their offense. To keep players safe, we will continue to keep track of the trends, both in online games and in the real world, as well as remaining vigilant in social norms of our time. We thank you for your continued support of Final Fantasy XIV. And so What are these activities that are prohibited? What are the penalties for those for breaking the rules, essentially? Let's see here. There we go. Okay. So there, we're going to kind of summarize this and kind of highlight the key things. Again, the link to all this information will be in the description below if you want like line by line detailed reading of it. So obviously, harassment. Harassment means speech and or behavior that inflicts deep emotional distress on another person. It is an extremely serious violation where Square Enix determines the harassment has occurred. A penalty equal or to or higher than the temporary service account suspension may be imposed. So below is a non-exhaustive list of behavior that could constitute harassment within Final Fantasy XIV. Discriminatory expressions based on race, nationality, thinking, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Discriminatory expressions about the state, religion, occupation, organization, etc. Obscene, indecent expressions. This is where the question goes into, obviously, that we've had questions about brothels and various role plays. I don't know if that is going to fall under that category. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking in the comments and the comments below regarding this. Is this going to be kind of what they were reporting on, from the Vegas Fan Fest, where really Square Enix has not had a stance on it? Obscene, indecent expressions. Does that qualify? I'd love to know. We'll have to wait and see if that is clarified at any point. So actions that also inflict emotional distress using content related to historical events or crimes. Stalking, disclosing or indicating personal information such as contact details with the aim of meeting up in the real world. Okay. I guess outside of the game will be considered fine. I would assume that if you're I don't know, we meet up in the real world at FanFest. So regardless, I don't know. Well, I guess obviously from a harassment perspective, yeah, you don't want people coming and throwing stuff at your house. Disclosing or indicating another person's real world personal information without permission. Other actions that are generally regarded as actions that inflict deep emotional distress on another person. Obviously, that's going to be subjective and based off of, the situation at hand. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the long run. These are prohibited in all places where expressions can be made, including chat, quick chat and emote markers, comments and names with regards to character names, if a phrase equating to harassment is formed within the full name. This is also regarding as harassment. So in the case of a group action, all the members of the involvement will be subject to penalties. So I guess if you're putting kind of a name to really kind of I gotta make fun of somebody with it, then there you go. There may be other types of harassment that do not fit into any of these categories described as above. So Square Enix may then determine the conduct constitutes harassment, even if such conduct is not expressly prohibited herein. So nuance nuisance behavior. Nuisance behavior means speech or behavior that hurts others or obstructs the gameplay, but which is not classified as harassment. Even if it was not the intention, a penalty may be imposed if the end result was that the other person was hurt or obstructed. And then they have some examples here. So aggressive expressions such as violent language, slander, insult, or threat. Expressions that provoke or belittle another person such as excessive criticism, negation, and ridicule. Ridicule. There we go. You can make fun of me for saying that. Expressions that significantly lack consideration for another person. That unilaterally, reject another person's opinion. Expressions that may be reasonable, that any reasonable person would find offensive. Expressions that compel a playing style. Some people that applies to that. That's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Expressions that attempt to unilaterally exclude someone from the game or content, community, etc., except when in accordance with the rules set by the administrator, such as a free company grandmaster. Expressions that contravene public order and morals. Other expressions that are offensive to another person. So just, think before you type in this case. Offensive expressions are prohibited in places where expressions can be made in Final Fantasy XIV, including chat, quick chat, emote markers, etc., comments and names. Use of offensive expressions in the form of a character name that is also regarded as nuanced behavior. All right. Obstructions of play. This means behavior that in general that obstructs another person's gameplay. Below is a non-exhaustive list. So spamming. This is using the chat, either quick emote or more, to obstruct another person's conversation or obstruct the use of Mog letters. For example, by sending an excessive number of unnecessary items in Mog letters. Wow. Even if obstruction was not the objective or the behavior, it may be deemed a violation if the other player is actually obstructed by the behavior. Careful out there. Obstructing transit progress. This means obstructing behavior such as group blocking of passages or facilities along with many players pass or obstructing the other person's gameplay progress. For example, by overlapping the important NPC deliberately for a long time. Improper expulsion voting. This means excluding another person by manipulating the expulsion voting. Seems natural that probably definitely already exists for a long time. Intentional leaving or disconnection. This means obstructing another person's gameplay by intentionally leaving the game or disconnecting from the server. We've seen that. That's actually happened to me a couple times, and it was just randomly out of the blue where like the guy would disconnect, come back, and we're like, hey, you're back, and then he would just run off and sit in a corner and then eventually disconnect, and it's like we had to eventually vote kick him. But it was really weird. Like, I still to this day I don't know what that was about. Other obstruction of play. This means all other behavior that deliberately obstructs another person's play by some means. So and then they're kind of talking about monster player kill, MPK. It means the act of sending a monster toward another person so that they are knocked out or obstructing another player's gameplay. Fraud. This is an act of deception intended to deprive the player of his or her full enjoyment of the game of the players properly. Fraud occurs most often in agreements between players for trade, loot, or betting. So trade fraud, loot fraud, bet fraud. Fraud relating to the gambling of gil and possessions on the outcome of in-game events. I guess they're not saying no to gambling because we take bets in-game for just silly stuff all the time. It's a lot of fun. Impersonation means the impersonating of a fraud or fraudulently claiming to be other players, Square Enix employees, or third parties. This could involve using a name that resembles a character's name, free company name, or is used by another person, or is using the name that can be the same as similar to the name of a Square Enix staff member. Behavior that disrupts the game balance. So this is essentially modifying, hacking, exploiting, automating gameplay processes. That doesn't seem to be much different. So they're saying creating, distributing, using, or promoting utilities that interact with the game. So I would honestly think, I'm wondering how that if they're really leaning in on, DPS meters, is that, like, we've always kind of been told, don't talk about DPS meters, right? We've always been told about that. But this, modifying, analyzing, integrating, and or reverse engineering game software data. So we know that data mining, people really like to do that. Is this, is this them coming down on that? And then obviously exploiting programming bugs or glitches. So Square Enix exclusively prohibits the use of third-party programs or tools, including programs or tools that permit automated or absentee play. Final Fantasy XIV, accordingly, the following activities are prohibited. Game Master GM may speak to players and investigate and confirm absentee play. If the player continues with this behavior, contrary to the GM's instructions, they'll be treated as absentee play and the subject to penalties. The following behavior is also prohibited. So real money trading. This is not a shocker to anybody. You cannot sell your account, characters, in-game currency, game services, in-game items, and gift codes, and in-game property. For real-world money. Now, I've seen them sell like in-game services for gil and things like that, like, clears, but we've also heard some people selling clears for actual real-world money. And so I'm wondering if this if that is a new addition to fall under real money trading. So if that's the case, I know there's some people out there that's going to get, not be able to take advantage of that loophole. Account sharing or loaning. Now, this is kind of weird. Disclosing of account information or login information such as your ID and password. Sharing, lending, or disclosing your account information may result in the user unexpectedly losing his or her accounts to third parties. Square Enix may be disable sharing, lent, disclosed, or compromised accounts. Now, I'm guessing this is like if you wanted somebody, you were paying somebody to level for you, because it's like I've had my couple of friends like, hey, can you log in for me and go like check my retainers? Now that I guess I could do it from my phone if I reinstall the app, but we'll have to see. Misuse of flaws refers to the deliberate exploitation of a fault in Final Fantasy XIV or manipulating a feature so that it does not function as intended in order to obtain personal gain and cause a disadvantage to someone else, Rank manipulation. This is categorized under abuse. This is essentially where you're agreeing to essentially by informal or formal agreement to using multiple accounts and winning and losing. Thus, rank. We were talking about earlier, PvP, feast, all that good stuff, guys. So just be careful with what you're doing with it, because that could be some serious stuff. Get some serious trouble here, and we'll go over what penalties they're going to that they use here for you guys here in just a second. And then last, ignoring the game master's instructions. If you are told to do something by the game master, then please follow their instructions. Otherwise, that will incur a penalty as well. And then lastly, let's talk about what these penalties are. Like, if you guys aren't aware, they've made adjustments to these as well. So there are types of penalties: a caution, a warning, a temporary service account suspension for 3 days, for 10 days, for 20 days, and then service termination. So a caution is the least severe penalty and is applied when relatively minor violation is confirmed. Depending on the nature of the violation, Square Enix will provide instructions for improvement, providing the player with guidance on how to improve their behavior to prevent further violations of this type in the future. So warning is a penalty applied to minor violations of which a more severe penalty than caution is required. As with a caution, depending on the nature of the violation and the instruction for improvement may be given in regard to the violation. Please follow any instructions given. Temporary service account suspension. Put that up. So this is essentially where you start to see different days, 3, 10, and 20. The duration of the suspension period is determined according to the severity of the violation. Combined with the player's record of past violations, even if a caution or warning was not applied in respect to past behavior, a temporary suspension may be imposed depending on the nature of the violation. About temporary suspension period. If a temporary suspension is applied, this will take effect immediately, but the suspension period will be counted from 12 o'clock a.m. the following day. For example, if a 3-day penalty is applied on January 1st at 6 p.m., play will not be possible during the 6-hour period until 12 a.m. on January 2nd, and then also during the 3-day period from then. So a total of 3 days and 6 hours. We will not accept any liability for the reduction in game availability resulting from a suspension, included the refund of Final Fantasy XIV subscription fee for that period of time. So about the scope of the temporary suspension. During the suspension period, it will not be possible to use any Final Fantasy XIV service accounts contracted with the Square Enix account. For example, if 2 Final Fantasy accounts, A and B, were contracted with the Square Enix account, and a suspension penalty applied to A, it would not be possible to use A or B. Note that it will be possible to access services other than Final Fantasy XIV, such as logging into the Square Enix account management system. About the review process for service account termination. If a service account suspension penalty is applied, a review will always be carried out to determine whether the service account termination should be implemented. As well as being a penalty for violation, the temporary suspension period is also the period in which during the review will take place. Depending on the nature of the violation, the review process for permanent suspension may not be completed during the temporary suspension period. In this case, the temporary suspension period will be extended until the review is completed. So account penalties escalation. All actions taken against service accounts are recorded permanently in the player for committing and in the event player committing multiple violations or previous violations, the service account actions are taken into this account. If a violation is repeated, a heavier penalty may be applied the second instance of such violation. If the past record includes a temporary service account suspension, essentially a more severe penalty with the previous temporary service suspension will be applied, even if the repeated violation was equivalent to a caution or a warning. For example, if a temporary service account suspension 3 days penalty was applied in the past and violating equivalent to a caution is confirmed, temporary service account suspension of a 10-day penalty or higher may be applied because of that. Service account termination. A service account termination can be placed on an account in the event of a severe violation and the result of the escalation of the account penalties. A service account termination will permanently remove your access to Final Fantasy XIV. In addition, any other Final Fantasy XIV service accounts that are associated with the Square Enix account will also be terminated. For example, if a player has 5 service accounts for Final Fantasy XIV and the other Square Enix account services and receives an account termination on one of the service accounts, they will lose access to the other 4 service accounts and retain access but retain access to other Square Enix services. Excuse me. Service accounts that have been terminated will not be reinstated under any circumstances. Refunds are only given in exceptional circumstances. Please review the refunds section in Final Fantasy XIV user agreement for further information. Note, in exceptional circumstances, Square Enix account may be subject to compulsory cancellation. Lots of words here, guys. Lots of information. That's the patch notes. That is the updates to the the prohibited activities, and obviously the penalties there within. So it sounds like, at least the way I'm reading this, we're looking at kind of leaning into the the role play servers that are kind of the brothel and the more adult themed stuff. That seems to be kind of heavy hitting there. I can kind of tab back to that if you guys haven't seen it. And then also we're looking at it sounds like the way they wrote the exception of play and other things like behavior that disrupts game balance with the with add-ons, with the fact that people on PC have DPS meters. I don't know. What's y'all's expression of that? What are you guys thinking on it? And then obviously, real money trading. Don't be selling runs of stuff. My voice is getting all cracky. Thank you guys for the 17 thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys sharing out the stream and the video. So with that, those the information. That's my thoughts on it. If you guys have any thoughts yourself, let me know. So Simon says he has a very important question. Go ahead and ask away. So Mia's saying DPS meters are fine. So they've always been fine. They say just don't talk about them in game. So as long as you don't, they've been fine. Your GP record says that the terms are worded in a way that it's you shouldn't use them. So just don't talk about them. But then again, I'm looking at these changes. I'm wondering if they are leading to kind of a point of stress or contention, because it is a difference between the two, right? PlayStation 4 players are at a disadvantage to PC because they do not have all the tools available to them. And if you're fine with that, that's fine. VR roleplay is strong. I guess so. Let's see here. Juliana says there is always room for abuse and bullying without rules. Works both ways. Earl saying, just be a decent human being and you'll be fine. Joe Thomas, so the misuse of flaws is about exploiting. Yeah, it's obviously whenever, so we saw it with a certain limit break, that was a part of the adrenaline rush that was brought into the PvP. So there was a bug and people find it and then they exploit it for their own use. And so whenever it's kind of well known, hey, this is an exploit, we shouldn't be doing this. That's kind of where that goes from there. So Mia saying some people are decent, but then the crazies come at them, at the decent people. Kim says, I have an observation. And then Uni says, well, it's time to disconnect my mic, keyboard, and all the typing skill because everything offends someone. Yeah, maybe. But, honestly, just, it's just protect yourself. Make sure, just always kind of be hey, this is what I'm thinking. But then again, how many people, I more or less communicate over Discord, over voice, because that way context is not lost as much. Gody says, why don't we have an in-game DPS meter like WoW has for their game? I don't want it in real time. I want it literally at the end of the content. When you finish the mission, give me the stat breakdown, how I did and how I'm performing over time. I think that would be what people would really be interested in seeing, because having it in real time ends up just kind of changing it. You kind of start focusing on whatever that number says as opposed to what you want it to be. So Jillian, and sorry if I'm mispronouncing names, not too sure about what Gody Van. Some of this may be in response to WoW Refugees. I don't know if it has anything to really do with WoW Refugees. Just as the game kind of grows, etc. Though it's bound to happen. So man, Chester, I'm going a little fast. So off topic, but I play Dark Knight and I'm trying to figure out my min-max stats. So do stats that have a cap. Everyone's saying don't go 10 and go direct hit, but I would like to figure out the math. I don't have the calculations. I'd point you over to Reddit. Go check out Reddit. They've got various min-max guides, really getting into the detail of what the hard caps are, soft caps are on various stats. But yeah, you probably want to focus in on that direct hit. And I usually like direct hit and critical hit as well, just because you get those really big numbers and they're really good. Vadim says, agreed, Dan. I wonder if kicking someone who keeps making mistakes in a farm party will end up now. I guess it will be interesting to see if they get reported or they report you. Depends. It seems like all this stuff is so subjective, right? Because how is somebody going to interpret it and go from there? Let's see here. All right. Guys, with that, I'm going to get some sleep. It is late. I thank you guys for hanging out with me for these patch notes. I hope you all have an amazing day. Enjoy patch 4.55. Lots of fun things to do. Lots of fun things to see. Hopefully you guys will join me for some PvP. We were going to do a community game night tonight, but it went, we forgot it was maintenance. So we ended up playing something else. So yeah, like I'm going to go sleep because I got to work. Work to game. It's the thing. It's the reality. But thank you guys. I really appreciate so many of you hanging out and all the comments. Sorry I was not able to get to them in real time. And I apologize for all the yawns. But anyway, for Work to Game, my name is Brian. Hope you have a phenomenal day. I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.